Hi, everyone. We're very excited to bring you the second episode of our podcast series, the CFO Files. In this series, we explore the journeys, insights, and leadership sessions of some of the most inspiring CFOs. In today's episode, we shine the spotlight on Anshul Agarwal, CFO at Akkodis, a leader who not only drives financial strategy in a fast paced, tech driven world, but also believes deeply in giving back to society. Through his story, we'll explore how CFOs today are balancing performance with purpose and shaping the future of finance. A very warm welcome to you, Anshul.
Thanks a lot, Jui, for the warm welcome. I'm extremely excited to speak at this forum, and I hope that some of the talks that we had today that is going to inspire the younger generation as well, and I'm able to contribute something better for the society.
Amazing. Anshul, you've had a rich journey through Infosys, Microland, and now Akkodis. Please walk us through some defining moments in your career and also tell us about what's guided your transition into leadership roles with a strong sense of purpose.
Sure, Jui. So maybe let me first walk you through my journey. I started my career primarily with Infosys post qualifying CA, and Infosys was my first corporate job. Now, believe it or not, but when I entered Infosys, it wasn't a finance job. In fact, I was hired as an associate consultant, which was part of the pre-sales team. At the time when I joined and I was given this profile, I mean, a lot like me had landed up to the same profile, who were chartered accountants and landing up to something which is not related to numbers or not related to finance. And at that point of time, I always thought that, why has it happened, at the start of my career? But looking back, I mean, maybe after 5 or 6 years or down the lane, I always used to think that probably that was the most beautiful part that could have, been happened to me. And I'll tell you the reason for that. Pre-sales is one of the, is one of the party to the entire deal pricing process. So in business finance, one of the key aspect of business finance is deal reviews. During the process of deal review, we interact with a lot of stakeholders. Finance interacts with a lot of stakeholders, including pre-sales. And the reason why I say that it was a defining moment because I was on the other side of the table and I was clearly able to articulate the moment I moved to business finance, I was able to articulate, I was able to empathize with how the entire chain works. And therefore, it gave me a lot of business sense. It gave me a lot of deal sense. It gave me a lot of sense on how to review and what are the parameters that the other party might be looking at. So, from a strategic perspective, I think that was probably the best thing which has happened, probably one insight. The second thing which I could remember is when I was working in Microland, I was primarily working in business finance. In fact, I joined as the FP&A manager and after devoting about 2.5 or 3 years as the leading the FP&A team, I requested my then CFO, and I'm still very grateful to him, very humble person. And he totally acknowledged and he said, okay, Anshul, I am okay if you want to switch your profile and move to something else. It was not an easy decision for any CFO at that point of time. And I take a leaf out of that because I've been hired as a manager position leading an FP&A team, and I'm asking him that want to move to a different profile because I want to widen my domain. So I moved from business finance to corporate finance. Corporate finance is a different ball game altogether. Corporate finance involves talking to the auditors, it involves taxation, it involves closing the books on time, etc. So there are a lot of compliances which are attached to corporate finance, right? And those compliances can lead a company in turmoil as well at a later point of time. But he reposed that confidence. In at hindsight, it led to a lot of it opened a lot of challenges in the beginning. During the initial maybe 3 to 6 months, I was practically working for almost 17 to 18 hours, and that was like because I was trying to manage both the profiles in the interim because there was a person who was taking over that role, but I had to pitch in. And similarly, I was taking over this role, and it was new for me because I was doing such kind of a role, especially audit, after my articleship days, and it had almost taken almost 7 or 8 years, and then a lot of things had changed, laws had changed. Some of the regulations relating to Ind AS or IFRS had changed. So these two moments had been totally defining moments for me, and it gave me a 365-degree view of how the entire finance process works. And today, when I look at my CFO role, where I need to manage the teams from both the sides. At least I have done that kind of a role. Therefore, I am able to step up and able to contribute much better. So I think to answer your question, these two have been the most defining moments for me.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for taking us through that. Now, what does a modern CFO role look like to you in today's day and age? When we're living in a fast, evolving, tech-driven global environment, right? And how do you balance the financial strategy with long-term value creation?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you look at the role of a CFO, the role of a CFO in the earlier days used to be primarily related to custodian of the books or compliance, right? I mean, those used to be two key aspects of any CFO. He had to be on top of the books. He had to ensure that the company is totally compliant with all the regulations. But today, both the aspects are important, very equally important, but it is the CFO who is not only party to the decision making process, he is the key member to the decision making table. I mean, I can relate to you a story, or a metaphor either between a map and a compass. So I always used to think, always think in this manner that a compass is like your vision. So compass is like a vision. A compass will always point to one direction, whereas a map, for example, if you open your Google map and if you plot any location from A to B in Bangalore, you may probably get two or three alternate routes. So your strategic direction map is nothing but your strategy. And therefore, the map can be two or three which can lead you to that direction, lead you to that path. It is up to the person how he wants to adapt during the course of the journey. But your compass, that is vision, is always one. It may take a longer route, but in today's environment, when we talk about CFO, he needs to ensure that he is aligned with the vision of the organization. And then, as far as the map is concerned or the strategic routes are concerned, it can be any that he would want to chalk.
Very interesting, the parallel that you draw, within with a map and a compass, talking about this piece. Great. Interestingly, also keen to hear your thoughts on how, in today's world, CFOs are expected to drive growth while managing risk, right? So how do
Yeah.
you strike that balance in decision making?
Absolutely. I think very good question. In fact, in one of the panel discussion where I recently went, this was one of the question that one of the finance leader asked in the audience, and he said that there are a lot of times when I'm speaking to my CEO and he's not understanding what I'm talking about because he's not aligned with the numbers or he doesn't understand finance that much. At that point of time, I responded to him saying that, a managing director need not understand you, but it is you who needs to make him understand what is it that you are trying to communicate. So effective communication is one of the strongest pillar of any CFO or any leadership, any leader for that matter. Until unless you don't have a, an effective communication, I'm not just talking about communication, but effective communication, that is, you are able to relate the story to the other person in his lens. In your last question, I spoke about empathy. I spoke about that if you step into someone else's shoes, and then it becomes much easier for you to make the other person understand or make the other person understand your position too. So it is very important that the CFO, when he has to drive the growth and at the same time he has to manage the risk, he has to understand that a CEO will never want to, a CEO of the company will never want to bypass any protocol. He would never want to take any risk. It is only that we as CFO who are the custodians who apprise him on time to time that this is the right path to take or this is the wrong path to take. We have to be assertive enough. We have to be better communicator in making him understand what are the various pitfalls, what are the various challenges which are there on the road. And until unless we don't do that, the growth that we're talking about, a CFO will always be distant from the growth and he will always think that this is something which is not going in the right manner. Another example, which I remember is very recently we were reviewing a contract, and the contract contains certain clauses. We had to enter into a contract with a customer. Customer is key. We want to make an entry. If we don't make an entry, we'll not grow. But at the same time, the contract had certain clauses which poses substantial risk on us, on our organization. Now, obviously, if you look only in silo, then you think that, oh, this is a very important customer. If I don't make an inroad, my competitors will make an inroad and therefore my company will not grow. But on the other side, what if you make an inroad, but because of the commercial clauses are such, they are so punitive in nature that at the end you may be at a loss until and unless the CFO does not communicate it properly to the CEO, he will not understand. He will not be able to understand that what are the underlying challenges to take or to whether to go forward with that contract or not to go forward with the contract. In fact, a lot of times when you communicate it to the CEO, then you can always be part of the decision making table and you can discuss and iron out all the concerns. There are always, as I mentioned, that a map has various routes. There are always alternative route to attain your vision. But the problem is that when two parties don't talk or there is no proper communication or there is a communication gap, then the problem arises. I hope that addresses your question.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be very insightful for all the aspiring CFOs, how to strike a balance working with a CEO, right, or a business head. Great. So, Anshul, also in your journey, you've overseen a lot of ERP implementations, right? So, what do you think are some common pitfalls finance leaders should avoid, and how can they ensure adoption across the organization?
Absolutely. I think a very relevant topic because, a lot of times it was understood that and implementing an ERP is a tech responsibility or an IT responsibility, but that's not the case because an ERP solution is not just a tech upgrade. In fact, it is a cultural upgrade, it is a process upgrade, and therefore there is a very different dimension in which you have to look at it. In fact, rolling out an ERP is it is very relatable to when you do an open heart surgery and you still know that, the patient is still awake. So the patient is awake, you are doing an open heart surgery. It means the existing process is still running. While the existing process is running, you are trying to bring something new. You are trying to replace a heart or you are trying to do a surgery. So when you understand that, then you also try to replicate with what are the existing processes which are being followed currently in the existing ERP. Why is it that you are trying to implement that ERP? So you need a solid business case first of all. Second is, if you are implementing that ERP, there you have to look at all the existing processes, streamline all the outdated ones. And we have to always remember that any tool for that matter, it is garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give the right inputs, you will get the wrong output as well. And doing an over customization, for example, if you try to do too much of customization in a tool and try to make it complex, complicated, then people will not be able to use it properly. And at the same point of time, it is important for you or it is important for the CFO to ensure that at the time when any ERP change is being factored, you have to factor in the cost of continuous training, cost of continuous improvement, cost of continuous customization if required. Because it's important to understand that any ERP is not a constant system. Things evolve, and therefore, you need to bake in all those costs at the inception to take any strategic decision. And then you have to, it is very important to set a realistic timeline also in place. Very recently, in fact, in my previous organization, we were implementing an ERP tool and we said, okay, we'll implement it in 3 months, and we had factored everything in the current year itself, saying that okay, we are not going to incur any cost in the next year. But that's a policy because you will incur, because first of all, when you implement any tool, as I mentioned, there are so many processes involved. There are so many teams involved. You need to take a buy-in from so many teams. You need to ensure that there is a proper UAT, training plan, etc. And everything takes time. So I think implementing an ERP is a key decision for any organization, and they need to ensure that they measure and they celebrate the wins together.
Amazing. I think that's going to be very insightful for anyone who's planning to or going through that journey in terms of how do you need to bring the whole organization together.
Absolutely.
Great. I think you also have had a great experience leading acquisitions and integrations, right? What are some of the key critical factors finance leaders should focus on to ensure there's a smooth transition and value realization in that journey?
So before answering that question, Juhi, I'll just ask you one question. Have you ever attended any North Indian wedding?
Absolutely. I am a
Okay.
North Indian myself, so my own wedding, I think, can be one of the examples.
Sure. So in any wedding, or in fact North Indian wedding, you'll see a band baja, right? And they'll be and in a typical band baja, you will have so many people who are probably playing the tunes, and everyone is playing the tune to a master, and that master is orchestrating the entire thing.
Yeah.
Now, for a moment, just imagine that it is one wedding ceremony which is going on. The tune is being played, band baja is being played, and then there is another marriage procession which is bypassing, and they also have a different tune. They also have a different music. They also have a proper orchestra. They also have everything. If you look or if you hear both the sounds sing, I mean, in solo, then you will properly understand. However, when both the music is playing at the same point of time, it is not music any longer, it is noise. And that's what happens in an M&A as well. Both organizations have different processes. Both organizations have different culture. Both organizations have different leaders. Both organizations have different ways of doing things. And therefore, when you bring two companies together, when we talk about M&A, a lot of time, finance leaders always talk about due diligence, financial due diligence. It is very important. I'm not undermining that. But before you get into due diligence, you need to understand whether the company that you're planning to acquire, will this fit to your vision or not? Will this fit to your compass or not? Is the compass head pointing to the same direction of this company where your compass is, directing to? So it is very important to understand these nuances, uh, and therefore the cultural nuance, understanding that whether I will be able to integrate or not, and that's where I would probably divide any M&A for that matter into probably three phases. The first phase is pre-acquisition or the pre-phase. The second is the integration, and third is the post-deal execution probably. Now, if I talk about the pre-phase, this is the start point. That is, you evaluate whether the vision of the company you are about to acquire aligns with you or not. Second, whether the processes or the people, maybe process may be different, but at least the mindset of the people, the cultural factors, whether they align or not. And third, when I talk about the integration phase, at the time of integration, you have to ensure you have a proper due diligence, not only a financial due diligence, but also operational due diligence too. When I talk about operational due diligence, what I mean is, let's take an example. Both the companies have different systems, different payroll, and both the companies have employees who are given salary, say X salary, but their payroll structure is very different. So at the time when you integrate, you have to ensure that the employees are not, they don't end up as a losing party. For example, you have a payroll structure which is very different from the other party's payroll structure, and therefore, when you try to integrate, you actually end up making the employees as a losing on the losing end. So you have to ensure that those things does not happen. These are very small, minute things, but ultimately, it is your employee who's gonna run the show. If the employee is not there, your show is not gonna run, especially in the service industry. So that is the second important phase. The third important phase, which I spoke about, is the post-deal execution. Now, whenever you acquire any organization, you have to continuously keep on adapting. You have to continuously keep on taking feedback from the company which you have acquired. You have to ensure that all your processes are aligned as quickly as possible. You shouldn't wait. Otherwise, what happens? It creates frustration in the mind of the employees. It creates dissatisfaction, which you practically don't want, right? So I think these are probably three of the most important points that one should consider before taking any decision of doing an M&A.
Great to hear your thoughts on it. And I think the way you're drawing parallels for someone to really understand and compare to some common nuances in life, I think that's giving a fresh new perspective and that empathetic lens for someone who's, trying to embrace this side of the world. The next segment is largely talking about something that every one of us is wondering about, which is the technology, and how emerging technologies like AI and automation are transforming specifically your role as CFO, and which of the shifts that you see excite you the most for the future of finance.
Okay, I'm just thinking, what can be a parallel that I can draw? Maybe when I'm driving a car, say as an
Yeah.
example, I'm always looking at the rear view mirror, right? I mean, those days, back in the days, maybe I always used to look at the rear view mirror and to see which are the people who are behind me and to assess the traffic and then drive forward, right? Now, after that, this technology has come long back, but you have GPS. It provides you the route. It provides you alternate routes. It also provides you how much traffic there is. It also provides you which are the places where you see a pothole, which are the places where you see too much of congestion, what are the alternate routes to take, where is the petrol pump, and so on and so forth. So it means that because of this very small technological shift within the car itself, the way you look at things, the way you see things has changed, right? So, and this is very similar to how AI also works, or this is very similar to how automation also works, because AI lets you see forward. As of now, finance has always been reporting the numbers. If suppose my quarter one has ended or quarter two has ended, I will report what is the fact. I will report that this is how my performance was. But gone are the days where you have to report only what was it. You have to be more predictive. You have to give decisions. Decision making has to be more real time, right? So I think these are some of the ways in which AI, as such, can help. And I think your second part of the question was, what are the various technologies that I'm more excited about? So I'm totally excited about real time decision making. I'm excited about predictive finance. I'm also excited about how hyper personalized insights can be given to the leaders. And when I talk about hyper personalized insights, let me elaborate that further. So what I mean is, in any organization you will have various different leaders. You may be having a delivery leader, you may be having an operational leader, you may be having an HR leader, you may be having a talent acquisition leader, practice leader, and so on and so forth. And every person is looking at different KPIs. Not everyone is looking at the same KPI. For an operation guy, a utilization may be a much important KPI, but for someone in HR, attrition might be an important KPI. Now, AI can definitely help in providing these hyper personalized KPIs to the leaders in real time basis for them to take effective decisions in the long term. And that's what the use case which I see, it's going to come very soon. It is just that I think today what is happening is AI has been there for almost 69 years. That's the time when the first time the AI terminology was also coined. However, AI from then to AI to now has changed dramatically because of one single reason, and that is the use case. Now, each and every one of us are able to relate to that AI thanks to ChatGPT, various other tools. We are able to relate to that AI on day-to-day basis in our real life examples. Otherwise, what used to happen is even in your organization or when you tackle any sophisticated tool, then you used to realize, oh, this is AI. But otherwise, in real life, we were hardly making effective use on a day-to-day basis of that artificial intelligence. Now, because the use cases have increased, people have become much more appreciative and people have started talking about AI much more. But AI has been in existence for so many years, for 69 years, as I mentioned. And in fact, I think in 2020 is when ChatGPT first came into existence, and then people went crazy. They started realizing the power of Gen AI or the power of the large language models on which this technology is built. So I think I'm extremely fascinated with these tools. And again, while I know that you've not asked, but I think these tools are not going to replace anyone until and unless if we are afraid that these tools are going to replace us, then it will surely replace us. It will surely, because The moment you are afraid and you're not taking any action, an action to learn, an action to adapt, an action to draw insights from that tool, you will not be able to you will not be able to compete with the next guy who's probably doing all those things. And that's where the new technology is going to be useful. And that's how it happens with any technology. If suppose the computer would have been in existence and you would have said, no, 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 computer is in existence, but I'll still use a calculator. Or I'll not go into Excel, I'll still use a calculator to compute 10 numbers, then it means you'll never learn and you will get replaced or you will not get hired. AI is as good as the person who's driving it, and therefore the person who's driving it is us. So we have to be on the driver's seat, dictating how the terms, how the AI helps us in finding solutions to the problems.
Great. I totally echo your thoughts on how we should view AI as an enabler, of our day to day, especially for someone who's been in the search space for a while. I think you can't really replace the human touch, of part of things. The next segment is something that I'm personally very interested to know, which is how do you essentially build a financial culture, right? So how do you approach building a finance team in this fast paced evolving global world that we're in?
Okay, I think, in my mind, there are only three things which come to me in which you can build a finance culture. One is business curiosity. I'll probably go to each one of them, but I'll just highlight. One is business curiosity. Second for me would be adaptability. And third would be influence over authority or influence without authority. Let me talk about each one of them now in a little bit more detail. So when I talk about business curiosity, a lot of times I've seen that people who are in finance, they are totally isolated from what's happening in the business. They don't know what's happening, or they probably don't try to understand some of the business nuances. And why that is important to understand is because until and unless you don't know what the business is generating revenues, I mean, why or what is the product that we are selling? What is the revenue that we are generating? Or how can that revenue increase? It is all about thinking from a business sense. And the moment you start echoing with the business leaders, the moment you start understanding where they are coming from, you will be able to better provide solutions to them. See, in maybe another 1 year down the line, I don't think business leaders would need a finance person to tell them what the numbers are because the numbers would be coming directly from the tool itself. So where would the finance leaders help value to is to draw insights and to add on to what the numbers are communicating. Because business leaders ultimately they rely a lot on finance leaders, on CFOs, on finance heads, etc., to draw parallels from the number, to give them insights so that they understand what are the new products, what are the new services that they can launch, they can provide to serve their customers better. So I think for me to drive a finance culture, if I have to take an interview and if you ask me the first quality which I would look for, it would be business curiosity, whether you are curious to understand the business or not. Second, I spoke about is adaptability, and that's very important. What I mean by adaptability is we know that, in fact, the last question which you asked was about AI, right? And the pace at which things are evolving, the pace at which things are moving, until and unless you're not adaptive to the change, until and unless you're not adaptive to processes, to systems, to people, you will not survive. Because all these three things, especially the technology angle in it, is changing at such a fast pace that today, if you are doing it X way, probably second day you may want to do it in Y way. I mean, yesterday or day before yesterday, I was reading the news, probably an article which said that there is a tool which combines the capabilities of all the AI agents that we talk about, being Perplexity or Claude or Chat GPT, all of them are combined together in one tool, and that tool is available for I think $10 a month, which is almost maybe half the price of one tool, which is ChatGPT itself, which is the paid version. So I'm saying on a daily basis, you come across so many tools, you come across so many functionalities, and if you keep yourself not abreast with those changing technologies, you yourself don't know, and therefore you will never be able to draw insights. You will not be able to tell the other person how it works, or not be able to change yourself as well. So therefore, adaptability would be the second aspect which I'll certainly look for. The third, which I said, was influence without authority. Now, what I mean by influence without authority is we know that I mean our chartered accountant is considered to be someone who's specialized in finance, who's someone who's giving the right direction in terms of compliances, who is probably flagging of risks and ensuring that the organization treads in the right direction. That is the role of a CEO, right? But if the chartered accountant or the finance leader or the CFO or the anyone in the finance community is only exerting influence by quoting those examples. That is, he's trying to tell the other person that, hey, this is non compliance, or this is not the way to do things, or this is a risk, etc., and therefore you shouldn't go ahead. Then what is the solution that you're providing? So we have to think beyond the risk. That is, we have to think how can we mitigate that risk. In fact, I quoted you an example of that contract review which we did, right? And the basic thing which we did over there was we were trying to evaluate how can we bypass that risk. We know that risk exists. We know that the customer is not ready to budge, but can there be something that I can do? Either take an insurance or probably sign a NDA with my employees saying that there is a risk, etc. Therefore, not to or bind them with confidentiality clause. So there is always a route that an organization can take, and for sure CEOs will decide that. For sure, they are sitting at the head of the organization. But as CFO, as a finance person, you need to equip the CEO with the right information, not just only flagging the risk, but also highlighting what can be the solution. So whenever I take an interview, for example, I always ask the person, okay, these are the risks that you've told me, or these are the situations, problematic situations that you've told me. How can we overcome this? What can be the other way around? So I'm always trying to judge whether that person can go out of the box. Can he be a maverick? Can he think something which can come out of thin air, which can be a very different solution, easy solution, and not costing on the business as well? Then only the business is going to respect you ultimately. So I think to answer your question, that's what I think.
Great. Taking forward that thought process, Anshul, very keen to also hear what qualities do you specifically look for in future finance leaders?
Mm, I think in future finance leaders, the first and the foremost quality would be, as I mentioned, I think I'll probably draw from the same inferences which I mentioned. For sure is foresightedness. That is understanding what can be the new technology which can come and being adaptable enough to appreciate that technology. The second would be again curiosity. That is to always think about how can I learn, how can I be more curious, not just in understanding the business, not just in understanding the tools, in understanding the processes, etc. Because every organization comes with a different process, different culture, and the processes keep on changing, evolving because of evolving ERP, because of evolving acquisitions that you do. A lot of times when you acquire a company or you get acquired, the processes may change, and therefore you need to be adaptable. The times are such, um, and and I think the third would be how uh, you can be a better enabler in taking the decision. So how can you enable the business in being able to take the decisions in a much more in a much more enhanced manner.
Great, great. Anshul, you've actively contributed outside the boardroom. How did that inclination to give back begin, and how do you keep it alive while juggling a very demanding CFO role?
Okay, I think first of all, going the extra mile, I don't think that, going the extra mile is anywhere disconnected from your job, because whatever things that I do, even if you take the example of the current discussion that we are having today, it always gives me fresh perspective. It always gives me fresh way of thinking. Even when, you told me that, we'll be having this podcast, I was thinking about what are the type of questions that you can ask, what are the kind of responses that I can probably give, and all of that contribute to fuel my perspective. And similarly, when a lot of times I've been attending some of the industry forums, and that gives me a different perspective because I am also hearing other people. I'm hearing the problem statement which different people have. I'm also understanding what are the solutions which the fellow finance leaders and some of the industry stalwarts are providing. So it is enabling me. So that is definitely a selfish motive, I would say. The second is, I think this thing started long back. I mean, during the time when I was in Infosys, I was privileged to be part of one group which started a school, or basically started providing education to some of the rural areas of Pocharam, Hyderabad. So I was part of Pocharam campus, and a bunch of some of us, we did certain initiatives to spread awareness, to spread education in the rural area. And we saw at that point of time that it is so, we are probably a lot privileged enough that we've got everything of the world, but one important point which every time I used to hear whenever we used to go to the school and we used to find no children, and then we used to go to their home to ask the children to come to the school. And then the parents had a very simple thing saying that, if they are at least at home, they can contribute to revenue. They can contribute to, at least generate 100, 200 rupees per day. Whereas if I send them to the school, there is, so, and this I'm talking about maybe 15 years back, and even at that time, people, and I'm talking about Hyderabad. And even at that time, people were not, they had not come out of this mindset that that education is going to only do something to you for the better. So I think it started over there. Even at that point of time, I always used to think that, if I am going to a particular school, if I am providing education, it is always enhancing me as a person, as an individual. So I think whenever any person does anything, he has to always take him at the center stage and think about what are the pros or the benefits that this activity can lead to him. And then only I think that person can do at utmost zeal with zero, with zero thinking at the back end that, why am I doing, or this is an extra time that I am devoting. Uh, so I think it's very important to take from, or to always think from that angle. So for example, today we are doing this podcast. You are also taking out some time of of yours over a weekend, and so am I. And I think both of us are spending that time and effort, and this is going to help us as an individual to make us better, to give fresh perspective, to understand things much better. So I think I always take it in that light.
Absolutely. That's very, very inspiring to hear. And I think a lot of young finance professionals, as well as other individuals, are hopefully going to take a lot of inspiration from that. Great. Coming to the last segment of this podcast, which is some quick fire personal insights. So, one book or mentor that shaped your leadership style.
Okay, very tough to quote one person or one book. Certainly, in fact, I mean, if I talk about mentors, during the entire tenure, I'm literally blessed, and I spoke to you about Michael and CFO. Similarly, there have been many instances during my career where I have, I have met such inspiring figures, such humble figures who have helped me at every point of time, even my current, my current managers in my current organization. So I think everyone has inspired me, and I have taken the leaf out of everyone's books because every person inspires me in all different ways. There are some people who are authoritative, there are some people who are humble, there are some people who are inspiring, there are some people who are totally out of the box. So I think every mentor brings in a different flavor altogether. And talking about the book, I'm very recently, reading about. In fact, it's just next to my bed. This is the book. This is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and the book, while it is about sleep, but it talks about. So I've done almost halfway through it, and the book draws a very interesting insight that how or why sleep is so important. Sleep, in fact, is one of the important things that a human being does. I mean, everyone does, but we don't realize that how important that is. One and two, it enables us uh, to to ignite our mental ability better. It helps us to remember things better. It helps us to apply our mind better. It helps a lot in terms of taking decisions better. So it is, in fact, for all the leaders, it is for all everyone to read this book. In fact, this was suggested by our Akkodis global CEO, and he recommended this book, and I started reading. And this is in fact a very good book.
Great. I'm gonna take that up as next, to read in my list for sure. How do you stay grounded amidst the pressure and performance?
Okay, amidst the pressure and performance. So, okay, I am. I mean, I like to play tennis as a recreation sport on tennis, and Roger Federer is a hero for me. And in one of the interviews, he was talking to the students, and he said that. So he quoted a fact. There's a clip. He quoted a fact. He said that, "Do you know that 80% of the time, I'm out of all the matches I have played, 80% of the time I have won." However, out of all the points that I have played in all the games put together, it is only 54% of the times that I have won. So while he has won 80% of the times, but the points he has won only 54%. And the point that he was trying to draw parallel was that every point that he is encountering, or suppose he does not win that point is done and dusted. He always resets for the next point because he knows that he has to ultimately win the match. And the match can be won even if you win 54% of those points, or even if you win more than 50% of those points. So I think it's a very important thing to always understand that there will always be bad raw patches, rough patches in our life. There have been, in fact, a lot of times, personal, professional lives, we will always have those rough patches, but we should always think that this is just a momentary instance which has happened. And life is much bigger than that. And therefore, we have to just keep moving. There are certain uncontrollable factors we have no control of, and therefore, we should not think about it too much. We have to always note down what are the controllable factors, and whatever those controllable factors are, we should focus on that and try to improve ourselves. If it happens, it's good. If it doesn't happen, we always have a second chance. We can always do it second time. So I think that's my whole mantra, how to stay grounded in term, I mean, amidst all the pressure or performance.
No, I think it's great to find inspiration from sports because that's where you see the most discipline and inspiring people out there. So I think Roger Federer does it again.
Yes.
The last question is to hear one piece of advice that you'd want to give to aspiring CFOs.
I think this is easy because I in fact gave it in one of the town halls, and I said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It's an old quote by Steve Jobs, but it is very relevant in today's time. And in fact, when Jobs gave this quote, I couldn't practically understand why is he saying stay foolish. Stay hungry, I could understand, but still I couldn't understand stay foolish. And today, after a lot of, maybe after a lot of time, I could understand what exactly that means when he says that stay foolish, stay hungry. One has to always stay humble. One has to understand that there will always be newer things which will come to him, and he will probably have no head and tail about it. So there will be new people, there will be new systems, there will be new technology, and he will always have to learn and adapt those technologies. And he can only do it only he thinks that he doesn't know anything about. Then only you will put in effort. So the moment you think that you are all wise, that you know everything, then you will probably not even put in effort to understand or to learn new tools or new systems. And in today's time, when we know that AI is moving at such a great pace, this quote is even more relevant that you have to stay foolish and stay hungry is goes without mentioning that you always should stay hungry for newer opportunities. You should always stay hungry to grab anything that comes your way. So there is no shortcut to success, I believe. While luck can be a part of it, but I believe that hard luck. It is only your own hard luck is what can take you to 2 miles. So I think stay hungry, stay foolish would be my advice.
Amazing. That brings us to the last part of our podcast. Anshul, thank you so much for joining us on the CFO Files. This conversation has been incredibly insightful, and I think I've personally learned a lot from your perspectives on leadership, transformation, and purpose. And I'm sure our listeners will take away just as much inspiration. Uh, we wish you and Akkodis the very best, and of course, look forward to seeing the impact that you continue to make.
Thanks a lot, Juvi, again. I mean, it has been a great privilege of mine. In fact, an honor for me to be doing this podcast with you. I've been, super happy with the work that you've been doing in, Vahura, and wishing you as well as the team Vahura all the very best for all the journeys.
Thank you so much, Anshul. I'll
Thank
just
you.